Okay, cool. We're live. We're good. All right. So there's a lot to get into this week. And I think this episode could actually kind of set the tone for what we end up doing on the podcast on a week to week basis. I'm going to take a look back at a few games, a couple players that stood out to me in the games that I watched from the past week and weekend. I'm going to update my top 10 rankings for you live here on the podcast. Plus, it's kind of a special week. I think, even aside from Thanksgiving and the holidays and family and all that, Thanksgiving Eve has kind of become an unspoken rivalry Wednesday in Michigan high school hockey. So we're gonna run down some of the biggest matchups that we'll see before holiday break. I'll give you my picks for each one of those games as well. But before we do that, like I say every time, right? Please, if you don't mind, subscribe here on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, throw us a follow on there. You can rate and review as well. Appreciate any and all kind of feedback here. And, if you want to weigh in on anything or voice your opinions and get at me about anything, I'm available on social media as well. So you can get at PD's Picks on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or even email me at contactpdspicks@gmail.com. So now that that's all out of the way, let's talk some hockey. I tried to squeeze in as many games as I could over the week, bits and pieces here and there. I didn't watch too many games in their entirety. I felt, watching a period, 2 periods, you got a pretty good feel for how that game was unfolding. And I will say this. So I watched Bay City and Grosse Pointe South, which was one of our games of the week last week. I watched that game live. I dipped over to the Bay Reps and Cranbrook. I watched that live. And I got to say, I'm a big fan of watching games on demand. I like being able to go back, watch a play unfold 2 or 3 or 4 times to see kind of how it broke down or what plays were made to make it happen. Watching those games live, I didn't have that luxury of being able to go back and rewind a little bit, so to speak. So a couple games. So in total, what did we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games to watch last week in my games of the week. I went 7-5. You, the public, went 8-4 in your collective picks there on pdspicks.com and on the blog as well. A couple games I wanted to know. Grand Rapids Christian Wreaths Puffer. I took GRC. The public was way heavy on GRC, and then the Rockets ended up pulling off the upset there, 6-4. So that's a big win there for Wreaths Puffer right out of the gate. I was all in on Livonia United. I still think there's time for them to maybe get right and still be a contender and still have a really good year. We're only a couple games in. I'm not going to write anybody off. But Novi obviously shut me up pretty good there with a 9-1 victory over Livonia United. And that's kind of what I meant is, I'd actually heard it was a pretty competitive, close game there for a good stretch. And then Livonia just kind of ran out of gas a little bit down the stretch and it got away from them. So I don't think that's the Red Stallions team we're going to see all season. I don't think that score is going to be indicative of what the Red Stallions are. And I don't know. We'll see about Novi. Could they be kind of that dominant, unsuspecting team there out of the KLAA East? It'll be fun to see there. And then obviously the biggest matchup I'm probably eating the most crow over, and happy to do it, honestly. Saw a bunch of good stuff out of Houghton over the weekend. 2 big wins for them, obviously. Big win over Escanaba. These were my 2 teams in the hunt for the conference championship there in the Great Lakes Conference. And Houghton silenced all the doubters, myself, in the form of an 11-1 drubbing there on Friday night to, like I said, silence me, shut me up pretty good. Ultimately making a statement that they've not only reloaded, but they may be maybe even better than what they were a year ago. And I'm going to get into that here in a little bit with the rankings, and we'll talk more. on Houghton, but just wanted to obviously give that little shout out there. And hey, I'm happy to be wrong on some of this stuff. So no issues there. I will have this week's, I'll get into it in a little bit, but I'll have another slate of games for this week. That blog will go up on the website as well. I'm going to give you my picks here on the podcast, and then you can obviously go to the website after we're done and submit your picks there as well. Let's see here. I'm going to get into, I'll shift gears here a little bit. Actually, no, let me talk about some of these games, some of the players I saw. So Bay Reps, the usual suspects came to work. You had Thomas Boynton Fisher, Grant Lucas, Coleman. They all factored in big time. Goaltending actually was a little maybe surprising to me for the Bay Reps. I didn't think it was going to be a strength, but I'm blanking on the kid that was in net, but he looked pretty strong, looked pretty good to me, and especially against some stiff competition there in Cranbrook. And so that's a good win. And I wrote in the preview last week that it was an opportunity for the Bay Reps to really build their resume and get a real quality win there right out of the gate, and they did just that. Cranbrook looked good to me too. There was another. Oh, I watched parts of Byron Center and Livonia Stevenson. Byron Center beat them 4-0. I think it was actually probably a lot closer than the score indicated. Good back and forth. I thought Stevenson played with pace. It didn't feel like Byron Center was running away with things. I thought there was good up and down. It's not like, I didn't feel anyways in what bits I watched, that Stevenson spent long stretches in the defensive zone where they were scrambling or chasing their tails or anything like that. Like, it felt really competitive and good back and forth there. Byron Center to me looks kind of scary. Am I getting ahead of myself? I might be. I might need to dial this back here. Where is? No, I guess not. Okay, so Byron Center to me, I can dive into the details a little bit there as far as they're concerned. That was a group that is another one who, similar to Houghton, graduated a ton, but maybe could have were a year ago. They looked big to me too on film. Looked like there were some big kids. And looking at some of the West Side teams I got to look at over the weekend, size is going to be a luxury over there, because I didn't see too many West Side teams with a lot of size. Anyone north of 5'10", 5'11", as an example. And BC looked really big to me. They played fast. Froisland looked good. Goaltending looked sharp. So Byron Center, I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more on them as we get going here throughout the season. But I was pleasantly surprised at, I knew they were going to be good, but they even exceeded my expectations there when I got my first look at them this season. So, okay. Let's get into the rankings a little bit. You can check out my rankings on pdspicks.com. Obviously, I got the top 10 rankings statewide. I don't break it down by division. I do that intentionally. For me, I think the divisions in high school hockey are a little arbitrary. Too many times you see Division III teams that would thump Division I teams, or Division II teams that fall to Division. Like, it's just, enrollment is not a very good indicator of how talented teams have been historically. Trenton, Hancock, Calumet, Forest Hill Central, like some of those smaller schools are some of the best programs in the state, regardless of enrollment. And then you have other instances where co-ops of 4, 5, 6, 7 schools are really struggling. So like I said, I just don't know that ranking teams on a divisional basis serves much value when you're looking at the totality of who the top teams are in the state. So that's why I do it that way. I know some other outlets are different. Obviously, the MHSAA is different with the NPR and everything, but I'm just my show, my rules, I guess, is kind of how we'll roll with that. But so the top 10 rankings are on the website. I also have AAA rankings for the 18U, 16U, 15U, and 14U age levels. I probably do need to touch that up a little bit here. Hasn't been updated in maybe 2 weeks or so, so I'll give that a rundown as well. But all of those rankings available, obviously, on pdspicks.com. So Okay, let's update the rankings here, and we will go with a nice little split screen look here for you. Let me right off the top mention a couple teams um, that I'm that are kind of on the fringe, right there in the mix. Not quite yet in the top 10, haven't broke through yet, but Bay Reps, I mentioned them, looked really strong against Cranbrook. That's a real solid win for them. East Grand Rapids is another team. Obviously, I've talked a lot about what they have coming back from last season. They also added, uh, is his first name? I think it's Glenn Green, Gordy Green. I should have looked this up before I got going here. Uh, Green. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Let me see if I can pull this up on the fly here. Yeah, all right. Glenn Green. I was right the first time. My bad, buddy. Sorry about that. But Glenn Green, I got to look at him too. He had a fantastic kind of DIY goal against Salem there, where he weaved his way through a couple defenders and then elevated it up over the goalie's shoulder there for a real nice, like I said, do-it-yourself project there type of goal for EGR on, was that Saturday? Yeah. Um, so he looks to be arguably maybe their best forward, given everything else they had coming back, uh, and Hoekstra and Millman and a lot of those guys I've mentioned in the last couple weeks. Green might even be the best of the bunch. So pretty exciting there for EGR. I got them right on the fringe. I also got Howell in the mix as well. They had a nice win over, I think it was Novi, and so expecting to see a lot more out of them here as the season gets going. But okay, let's see if we can get going here. Okay, so number 10, I got Orchard Lake St. Mary's. They're down 2 spots here from last week, but I think a lot of that is they were idle. They, as far as I can tell anyways, didn't play a game last week. So dropping down 2 spots, it's really more about what some other teams have done last week than necessarily what Orchard Lake St. Mary's has or hasn't done. Number 9, I got GRCC. They're up 1 spot. Real nice wins over Granville, 4-1, and then West Ottawa 5-0. That's probably about what I would have had expected. But again, GRCC, you're out there, you're taking care of business. And again, I've mentioned some of the talent they have at all 3 levels. So they keep on this track. They could really continue to climb these rankings and move their way up. So number 8, got another West Side team here, Byron Center, as I was talking about earlier. They're up 5 spots. I had them at 13 in my preseason top 25. Very impressive win over Livonia Stevenson. I mentioned just how fast they played, really structured game. Like, I was very surprised at how put together they looked this early in the season, right? Sometimes systems, power plays, forechecks, things like that takes time. I don't care how good you are. Some of that stuff takes time to kind of implement and get your feet underneath you. Byron Center looked to be moving right along at a midseason clip there. So number 7, this is I think, other than Orchard Lake St. Mary's, my only winless team in the top 10. So I got Heartland dropping down 2 spots here to number 7. 2 really tough games, so I kind of let it slide a little bit, not having a win. And obviously, the Eagles are a team that I think is going to get right here, anyways. But played an extremely tough Houghton team, and seeing what they're about. Talking to Coach Rick Gadwa, he even said, he's like, I don't think people realize, myself included, apparently, how good Houghton really is. They had multiple defensemen. Connor Raffelli, obviously, kind of the tip of the spear there, but a bunch of different defensemen there on the back end. A couple of big guys too, like very much Upper Peninsula type kids, just big, burly, lumberjack looking guys who are going to mess you up on the ice. I'm blanking offhand. I know I wrote in my biggest takeaways article, I had mentioned a couple of the defensemen I liked there on the back end for Houghton. And then obviously the forecheck that just keeps coming at you in waves. So Heartland had their hands full there on Saturday night. They came back Sunday and played a real tough Hancock team that I think is on the up and up. Tied Hancock. I think that's probably a better tie for Hancock than it is for Heartland necessarily. I think just kind of goes to show you what direction Hancock is heading. But ultimately, it's been a long weekend for Heartland. They went all the way out to, I think it was Minnesota for a scrimmage. and then came back to the UP and played Houghton on a tough one, and then played Hancock there to wrap up the weekend. So it's been a long weekend for Heartland. I'm not necessarily going to hold it against them too much that they went, 0-1-1 on the weekend. I think that's actually you're probably pretty happy with that after the way things went down with it being such a long road trip and everything. So I got Heartland at number 7. Number 6, got U of D. This is a little tricky one for me, and there's another team coming up here that's a little tricky too. U of D obviously playing out-of-state opponents there. They played St. Ignatius kind of on a back-to-back. They played a pair of games, split that pair of games with St. Ignatius. I want to say, what did I see? Did they win like a 7-6 kind of high-scoring, high-flying offensive type game in overtime or a shoot? I forget what it was, but it was a high-scoring game. Nonetheless, I think that bodes well for the offense. Proves out that, Carter K, Tommy Angel, some of the characters they have on offense are absolutely able to produce defensively. Maybe we got to tighten some things up and kind of get right there defensively. But ultimately, St. Ignatius is a hell of a team too. Let's not overlook that. It's not like they gave up. It's not like they gave up 6 goals to my Flying Fish men's league team. So, okay, we'll move here. Number 5. I got Brother Rice. They're up 2 spots. Probably could have been up even higher given their 2 wins. 2 impressive wins, I think, beating 2 teams I had in the preseason top 25 and doing so, scoring 10 goals in those 2 games. I think Brother Rice's leadership group talked pretty openly at MIHL Media Day about not necessarily that scoring was going to be an issue, but that even they recognized they were going to have to win games and in a different style than they had grown accustomed to the last couple seasons. And with that, I think even they expected more low scoring. They're going to have to grind out some 3-1 wins, 3-2 type wins. And here they are scoring 10 goals in 2 games. Roman Valaire had a big night. Was it Saturday? I think he had, what was it? 2 goals and an assist, or 2 goals and 3 assists. I forget what it was specifically, but I know he had a big night. And then obviously they still got some other hitters there too. So Brother Rice at number 5 and really could be much higher on this. Clarkston, I got at number 4. They had a really big win over Flint Powers, 2-1. That was one I kind of had circled on the calendar last week as well. They are down a spot here, but again, similar to Orchard Lake, I think it's because of what some other teams are doing or have done, not necessarily anything Clarkston could have controlled here. But the 2-1 win over Powers was big. Then another win, I'm blanking offhand, but nonetheless, 2-0 to start the season, and they'll have a couple tough matchups coming up too. They're a part of the Holiday Great Lakes Invitational Light here in Heartland. So you got Heartland, Brighton, Forest Hill Central, and Clarkston, your 4 teams in that high school version of the Great Lakes Invitational here. And going to have some real quality matchups, tough competition coming your way Friday, Saturday between those 4 teams. So Clarkston's going to have their hands full coming up right out of the gate. And then number 3, I'll give credit where credit's due. And damn, Houghton looked good. So I got them up quite a few spots here. What is it? I got them up 3 spots. And that's kind of what I meant was Houghton just maybe did a little bit more than some other teams here to creep their way up as high as number 3 with, I think, probably 2 pretty obvious subjects here at 2 and 1. Brighton and CC, it's probably going to stay that way for a little while. Like I said, like I've been saying about CC, until someone proves otherwise, there's no reason for them not to be at the top of this list. Until someone proves otherwise with Brighton, I don't see them falling out of that 2 spot either. So for Houghton, for me to slide the Gremlins all the way up to 3, I think that's pretty impressive there. So I think you have it here. Here's your top 10. I'll have a little bit more here on the website as well, pdspicks.com. Be sure to check it out. And I'll have more breakdown on all these teams, plus a whole bunch more coming your way. So that wraps up the rankings. Let me pop back here. Here we go. What did I have on the slate here next? All right. So before I get into this week's slate of games, I got, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tilts coming your way, all from Wednesday night. We're going to dub it Wednesday night rivalry here on Thanksgiving Eve. Before I get into any of those matchups, though, as I mentioned, I'll have this blog posted on pdspicks.com with even more analysis than what I'm providing here on the podcast. And just like last week, you'll be able to submit your picks on each one of these upcoming games as well. So be sure to get in on the action there at pdspicks.com. And don't drag your feet either, because I'm posting this here on Tuesday. Games start up on Wednesday. So don't drag your feet. If you want to get in the mix, go to the site now and get involved. So we'll bounce back here. Let me we'll pull this back up, and we'll get into some matchups here. Right out of the gate, so some of these matchups too, I'm sure I'm missing some key rivalry matchups, and if I am, all apologies. DMs are open. Shoot me a message and let me know maybe any rivalries that I've missed here, not just on Rivalry Wednesday on Thanksgiving Eve, but throughout the season. Be sure to shoot me a message, let me know, and we can have it on the radar here moving forward. But right out of the gate here, Portage, Mattawan. I'm told this is a big rivalry, maybe even the biggest rivalry in the South Central, Southeast, South. Let me try that again. May be the biggest rivalry in the South Central Hockey League. There we go. All right, that was way better. I'm not 100% sure why it's a big rivalry. I'm not too dialed in with some of this, Southwest Michigan rivalries, whether be it football, basketball, whatever. So I will need some educating on this particular rivalry and tell me why. But Mattawan has played a Portage school prior to Thanksgiving, going back the last few years. I want to say it was Portage Northern before Northern and Central merged and formed the Portage Muskies. They co-opted back in 2020, and since that co-op, Portage and Mattawan have met on the day before Thanksgiving every year since then. So Mattawan, as far as I could go back on the High School Hockey Hub, holds a 6-2-0 lead in this series. And they've also won the last two particular matchups that came on Thanksgiving Eve. Not only that, but the Wildcats ended the Muskies season in the Division II Regional Championship last winter. So there's going to be a ton of bad blood here when the people across from you are the ones responsible for ending your season less than 8 months ago? 7? Math isn't my strong suit. So there's a lot on the line here. Mattawan comes into this matchup 0-1. They dropped a tough one last week that I probably would have expected them to win against, I think, West Ottawa offhand. They lost 4-3. They got to get their offense going a little bit, I think. See if my guy Braden Lewis can get loose. Portage on the other side, they're feeling pretty good, I think, after an opening night 4-1 win at Jackson. Optimist Ice Arena is not an easy place to win, so for Portage to go in there and come out unscathed is pretty big. Caden Stasienko with a 3-point performance that night. I think this game could be a bit of a chess match. Each team trying to exploit matchups, get the respective go-to guys. Lewis on one side, Stasienko on the other. Each coach trying to get their guy loose, find certain spots to get him involved in. You try to exploit those line matchups, so your top line against their third line, things like that. Home team certainly has an advantage when it comes to that regard, being able to have last change and things like that. I got a tough time with this particular matchup because my heart says Mattawan, my head says Portage. I'm going to go with the Muskies in this matchup to get the W there, but I think it's going to be a real good matchup. I hear they pack Wings West with fans for this rivalry, and it's a pretty wild environment. So keep an eye out for that one there tomorrow. Wow, it's coming up quick. Next matchup here, De La Salle, Utica, Eisenhower, 7:30 at Suburban Ice Macomb. This is another not so rivalry in my opinion. Again, I'm not I'm not out that way. So again, someone's going to have to kind of educate me on this particular rivalry. It stems from football. It's typically where it comes from. But these two teams have played every Thanksgiving Eve, going as far back as the Hub history goes. 10 meetings dating back to 2012, and it's an even, this was kind of surprising, even 5-5 series split. De La Salle has been victorious in 3 of the last 4, including a 7-1 drubbing of these guys back in 2021. That was the largest margin of victory in this series on record. Other than that game, though, very competitive series. I mentioned 5 wins apiece. Ike with maybe 2 surprising results last week with a 2-2 tie to Walled Lake and then a 5-4 OT win over Stoney Creek. But Stoney Creek is a real good team. And so a win there says a lot to me anyways. But, they come into this matchup feeling probably pretty good about themselves after Sawyer Hotchkiss' game-winning goal there in that OT thriller. Senior forward Dominic Reggio is a guy I've had on my radar there for a little while too. He had a huge night. 3 points in that game as well. And I got to be honest with you, I kind of spaced on who I even picked. Who did I take here? All right, yeah. I'll roll with the Eagles. Let's go, Ike. I do think, I will say this, I think De La Salle is I don't want to say down, but maybe a little vulnerable. I think there's an opportunity here for Ike to capitalize, right? Strike while the iron is hot. They're coming in, like I said, off of a pretty emotional win there over Stoney Creek. Maybe they keep it rolling, they keep that momentum going, and they snowball 1 victory into 2 there. So another big rivalry Wednesday here coming up, a rivalry I've been a part of the last 3 years. I've lived it, got to experience it. Saline takes on Ann Arbor Pioneer. These two teams, again, have played Thanksgiving Eve for as far back as I can go. It's a tough one whenever you have 2 teams who share the same rink and compete for literal space and ice time and home and away benches, all that good stuff. It always makes for exciting and very personal rivalries. And then obviously, what did I write? I think I wrote on the blog on pdspicks.com, like, I don't like them and they don't like me. And it's just a very obvious, tense rivalry. Saline has dominated this series in the last couple meetings. Let me think here. I was missing something here. I just wanted to make sure I got it. But Saline has outscored Pioneer 19-0, mercying in both of their matchups last season. A lot of those same characters that were responsible for those W's are back for Saline. Tyler Schroeder in net, Matteo Idapalo, Blake Woodrell, Aiden Rumor, Luke Kelly. Those are all guys who were a part of those results last season. They're back again. So I think the knee-jerk reaction is, why would the results be much different? Well, I think Pioneer is coming back and better and making some improvements over this offseason. I said, I was talking with, is it on social media or I can't remember, but I was talking to somebody about how the SEC is better when the Ann Arbor schools are better. And Pioneer had a tough time last season. Skyline had a tough time last season. Huron has kind of been building the last couple seasons, but none of those 3 had really kind of been in the hunt for a conference championship, for a division championship. And I think you're starting to see some of those gears start to turn. I've talked glowingly about Graham Newton at Skyline. I think he puts them on the right track. Pioneer's bringing in some new pieces as well. So Pioneer is starting to move in the right direction. Ann Arbor Huron, I've talked about Carson Kacharski too. So I think after a couple down years in general of Ann Arbor schools hockey, it's starting to come back a little bit this season. I don't see Saline mercying Pioneer for a 3rd straight time. I think this could actually be pretty competitive. Max Kamutin had 5 goals already this season. Anthony Yang has a pair as well. So they're starting to generate some offense. I want to say they're 3-0 already on the season, even though we're a week in. So they've gotten some wins. There's a little momentum. There's a little confidence there coming into this rivalry matchup, and definitely an attitude after a couple straight losses there to Saline. Pioneer's going to come into this matchup angry, emotional. Saline, there's a chance you could be overlooking them and looking past them to down the road. So I think Pioneer could be in a position where they get the jump on you early and they're out to a one nothing lead, or they surprise you with a 2-0 lead at the end of one or something like that. But ultimately, I am taking the Hornets here to keep that streak going and extend it to, I believe, 4 consecutive wins over Pioneer. But I do think, like I said, this game is going to be closer than it has in recent matchups. I'm feeling like a 5-2 finish here, maybe. But Pioneer, like I said, could jump out to an early lead, could even have the lead at the end of one, and then Saline kind of knocks off the rust and gets going in the right direction there. So next matchup here. Oh, I skipped this. I'm out of order here. I had a different matchup on my notes here. Okay, Plymouth, Canton, very unique rivalry. People outside of Southeast Michigan, I'm not sure you're aware of this rivalry and what the Plymouth, Canton, Salem schools setup is like. It is wild and fascinating. You literally have 3 full-size high schools on the same city block. Their campus intertwines. You go from building to building like it's a college campus. You could have first hour in Canton High School, second hour in Plymouth High School, and third hour in Salem High School. And I may be exaggerating. Some people actually in those schools may call me out on that. But that's kind of been my understanding, is I could be a Plymouth student and play for Plymouth athletic teams, but have none of my classes actually in the Plymouth High School. Like I said, feel free to call me out on any of that if that's incorrect, but that's been my understanding over the last couple of years. You could literally be you could be in third hour chem class sitting next to a kid you're going to play against later that night. And I think that's even the case here with Plymouth and Canton, where you could literally have your opponent sitting on the opposite side of the aisle in a desk right next to you in class, and then you're playing opposite each other there on the face-off dot. So pretty unique and wild rivalry the way this is set up, and obviously Salem factors into this little trio as well. However, the Plymouth and Canton matchup falls on Thanksgiving Eve. Let me see if I can find some notes on it. There has been stretches, and I think that this season is one of them. These two teams are only set to meet once this year. So with that comes a lot of bragging rights. You hold those rights for 365 days until you guys play again next Thanksgiving Eve. So there's a lot on the line here. Canton comes in 0-2. Plymouth, meanwhile, got a big 2-1 win. Gutsy 2-1 win there over Saline. I think the Chiefs show up much better than the 8-0 result we saw in this matchup last season. But Plymouth, I still like them to stay on top in this series. The series overall favors them 15-3 over the past 11 seasons between these two teams. So I do like Plymouth to get the win here, but I do think it's closer than some others may think here, and Canton could contend similar to what I could see out of Pioneer and Saline. I think you could see that replicated here between Canton and Plymouth. One more KLAA matchup for you here. There's a lot going on here in the KLAA, especially on Wednesday. Novi, Northville. This particular rivalry, I think, if you're anywhere in the state, you know the tensions are high between these two teams, just given their geographical locations. Not to mention, again, they both play out of the same rink. And I did mention, not only do they play out of the same rink, their locker rooms are literally side by side. You got Mustangs, you got Wildcats. I think these guys are dogs. They're dogs on both sides trying to claim their territory there in the ice rink at Novi Ice Arena. So I think it's going to be super intense there Thanksgiving Eve. Northville, you know how I feel about Northville. Over the last couple weeks, I've talked about some of the pieces they have already in place, plus the new guys coming into the program. The job Ryan Ossenmacher has done there in 16 months, 14 months. It's been a very quick turnaround, but nonetheless. And then Novi, obviously, I highlighted their big win late last week as well. Let me see here. There was something I wanted to mention. Northville won the Thanksgiving Eve matchup 5 times in a row in this series. Novi even the season series with a 4-1 win last February. Okay, so 22-23 season, they split 1 win apiece. Since then, since 2018, it's been dead even in this series, though. So it's one that's constantly gone back and forth. Um, and really, what was I? I hate when I lose my place like this. Oh, drives me nuts. Okay, so 21 games on record on the hub. I'll just kind of start with a clean slate here. 21 games on the hub. I think that's the most out of any of the rivalries I'm highlighting here today. 6 of those games have been decided by 1 goal. 7 of those games have just been decided by 2 goals, and 5 of those games have been decided by 3 goals. So you're looking at 16 of the 21 matchups going back the last decade being very close and contended games here, regardless of what teams' records are coming into it, regardless of previous matchups, whatever it may be. This particular game, this particular matchup tends to be a tight one between Novi and Northville. However, I know I got burned last week picking against Novi. They may very well burn me again, but I'm going to go with my Mustangs here to get a win. I think it's going to be ugly. It's probably like a 2-1 type game, 3-2, something low scoring. But ultimately, like I said, if Northville is going to have the season I kind of expect them to, this is a game. This is a game they got to have. So, getting into again, I'm out of order on my sheets. All right, I got to bounce around here a little bit. This is again another not so rivalry. I don't know how I'd describe this because these two teams aren't in the same conference. They don't share a school district or a border, or they're not even in the same county. So it's a very unusual rivalry. But if you look at kind of the history or the origins between Brighton and Orchard Lake St. Mary's, you'll find a pretty intense, a lot on the line in these particular matchups. These two teams eliminated the other from the Division One state playoffs 4 years in a row between 2016 and 2019. So you can imagine tensions have been kind of high in this particular meeting for the last couple of years. They have played, and again, it's another kind of origins. I need a historian who goes farther back than I do. Tell me when this particular meeting between Brighton and Orchard Lake got slotted in there on Thanksgiving Eve, because it goes all the way through the history of the high school hockey hub. And with the exception of the 2020-2021 COVID shortened season, these two teams have played every Thanksgiving Eve. 11 of the last 12 meetings have been decided by 2 goals or fewer. And Orchard Lake St. Mary's has won 3 of the last 4 matchups, despite the series being deadlocked at 7 wins apiece. So again, you've got another one here that's super competitive, super close, and could really tip the scales in either direction. I've been hyping up Will Keane pretty good. I know some other people have been hyping him up to me as well. And I think we're going to see what he's made out of real quick, right out of the gate here. Eaglets, as far as I can tell, like I said, maybe there was some missing information there on the hub, but Idle last week didn't play a game. So when they take to the ice against Brighton on Wednesday, it will be their first action of the season. I'd probably expect to see Will Keane, but I guess it could be just about, it could be someone else too. I'd hate to assume who coaches are going to start in certain spots. That's probably a little irresponsible of me. Maybe I need to back off that hill. But ultimately, it's going to be a test defensively regardless for Orchard Lake St. Mary's. Brighton's offense was buzzing pretty good against Detroit Country Day. Cam Duffney, Lane Pettit, the usual suspects, right? But then even senior Merrick Alent, he's a big-bodied forward. He chipped in 2 goals. So this team has a bunch of weapons. Charlie Birchfield, Sider, they've got a lot of guys who can contribute offensively. You're seeing Alent get involved as well last week. So if they have all these different guys who can contribute offensively and score in a variety of ways. You've got the high skill guy and Duffney. You've got the grinder, big body guys and Birchfield and Alent. It's going to be tough. They can score pretty. They can score ugly. But also, it'll be interesting to see how Orchard Lake St. Mary's, assuming Keen and net, but then also Kyle Kafka up front, Dugan Cretu, Julian Johnston is another forward up front I like. Can they make things interesting offensively? And I don't think you want to get in a track meet with them, but if Keene can keep this a low scoring game, it gives you a chance. Can that forward group up front for Orchard Lake capitalize on a couple opportunities and keep things close? Ultimately, though, here, ultimately going with the Bulldogs here. Like I said, until they're kind of starting to be in that similar vein as Detroit Catholic Central, until someone can prove me otherwise, I like Brighton here in this spot against Orchard Lake St. Mary's on Thanksgiving Eve. And then we got the matchup of the team up north taking on those guys over there. This rivalry took out a lot of legs for me personally at OAA Media Day. I mentioned in the blog on pdspicks.com, Vaughn Putz. I asked him what day did he have circled on his calendar, and he kind of looked and he said November 22nd when we play those guys over there, and he pointed at RU's direction. So I think there's some bad blood here. I think it's a little intense rivalry. I'm actually excited to kind of follow along and peek in and see what happens here in the Battle of Rochester. He sounded a little – Vaughn was a little salty maybe about this particular matchup, and probably for good reason. RU is 8-1-1 in the last 10 meetings. So it's a rivalry game with a rivalry trophy, I'm told. I'd like to get eyes on that. Somebody get me a picture of that rivalry trophy. So these two teams going head-to-head. RU holds that 8-1-1 advantage over the last 10 meetings. So that trophy has kind of resided with RU there for quite some time. They are set to meet one more time in February, but obviously this one is the most important one because it's the next one. So the Cougars want this one bad, and I think they just might get it. You know, I've talked glowingly about Carson Cagigal. Defenseman Tyler Burns currently leads the team in scoring with 6 points. I know it's early. You know, they're only 2 games into the season, but still, if you're getting that kind of production out of a guy on the back end, that says a lot about Burns. Christian Goichai is another sneaky good forward there. He's got a ton of talent. Haven't gotten the opportunity to talk much about him yet leading up to this season. In total, they got 8 different goal scorers from last week, which I think says a lot just about their depth and ability to threaten from multiple layers of their offensive attack there. RU has had the obvious edge in net, maybe. Okay, sorry. I'm trying to read and talk at the same time. Let me see if I can walk this back here a little bit. RU with a bit of an edge there in goal may help even out this matchup. That's what I was trying to say. But ultimately, I think Stoney Creek's offense breaks through, gets it done. I'm going to go with the Cougars beating those guys over there in a big rivalry matchup there Wednesday night. And finally, we get into, I don't know that it's even arguably, I think it's pretty clear cut that this is the biggest rivalry in Michigan high school hockey whenever Detroit Catholic Central and Brother Rice take to the ice. This is the granddaddy of them all in Michigan high school hockey. Albeit it hasn't really been much of a rivalry in recent memory. And I say that because CC has won 7 of the last 9 meetings. And their meeting the night before Thanksgiving goes as far back again. This is another one that goes as far back as I could find. I know there's historians out there, both these programs, very steeped in history with a long track record of success. I'd be curious to peek at those records and see how far back the Thanksgiving Eve matchup goes. That would be a fun little deep dive. It's an important one, though. This matchup is really important because the winner of the Thanksgiving Eve matchup has gone on to win the rematch later on in the season, and these two teams do meet, I believe, in January. Excluding the 2021 COVID-shortened season, the winner of this matchup has gone on to win the rematch each of the last 3 seasons, and that includes, was it 2020 when 2019, 2020 when CC in their 2 games, in their 2 regular season games. Also, I don't know. This is probably another deep dive I'd have to do. How many times the defending Division I state champion took on the defending Division II state champion? That's now happened between these 2 teams. CC, your Division I state champ. Rice, your Division II state champ. This will be the 3rd time that such a meeting has happened. And I believe both of those prior matchups went in favor of CC. I do think that's probably the narrative here yet again. You'd be foolish, I think, to pick against CC at this point. I do think Turner England in goal gives the Warriors a chance. If this is a low-scoring game, if this is a 2-1 game, I could see Rice potentially stealing here. But I don't know that you can hold CC's offense to 2 goals, even with a guy like Turner England between the pipes. So it feels kind of like a 4-2 game. I think it could be close, like 3-2, and then you're hitting an empty netter there. But ultimately, I'm going with the Shamrocks there as I don't want to say an obvious pick, but my pick to win there. The biggest rivalry in Michigan high school hockey. I think the Shamrocks stay on top in that series as they continue to stay on top of Michigan high school hockey as a whole there. So, okay. So I've given you a recap of last week. I've updated my state rankings for you. We've run down a bunch of big rivalry matchups set for tomorrow. Be sure to, if you've made it this far especially, subscribe to the YouTube channel because we're only going to continue to do more cool shit like this. So get involved, be a part of that as well. Check out the website, pdspicks.com, where you can find the podcast, blogs, rankings, and so much more. I got player profile pages coming your way shortly as well. As soon as those get out, or as soon as I can publish those and put a bow on that, I will announce that on social media. So be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. That will be player profiles and all the scouting notes that I have for every player in my top 100 names to know list that went out last week, plus every player I watched throughout the season that I have notes on will also get a player profile page with my game notes, accessible to anyone and everyone. So all of that will be available on the website as well. So I got to think here. Where am I going to be this weekend? I don't know that I'm going to be on site for any of these rivalry games. However, I do have plans to take in a couple of games over the holiday weekend. Michigan, Ohio State being one of them. But also, I'm kind of eyeing that Great Lakes 4-team tournament that's going on in Heartland. That'll be a fun one. So, okay, a lot going on. Follow me, connect with me on social. Check out the website, like and subscribe. Until next, skate hard, have fun. I'll see you guys up.